All right, call it a misgendering misdemeanor. A new survey finds that nearly half of millennials think if you misgender a trans person, that should be a criminal offense.
This story is insane. Now, Newsweek asked Americans whether misgendering a person should be considered a criminal offense. Now, before we get into the results, we need to understand this from a legal perspective. In the United States, we have what's known as the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Now, this places limitations on the government's ability to regulate speech. The Supreme Court has also made it clear that some speech is protected while other speech is not. So when we look at this, it's probably best to look at what's not protected, because essentially by process of elimination, everything else is protected. Now, these are the type of speech that the Supreme Court considers not to be protected by the First Amendment, essentially saying the government can regulate this type of speech. Blackmail, defamation, fighting words, incitement of imminent lawlessness, national security, obscenity, perjury, plagiarism, solicitation of crimes, true threats, and illicit pictures involving children. We understand what all we all understand what that means. Now, if your speech doesn't fall into one of these categories, then you're likely okay. Now, this is a very simple explanation for something that's much more complex, but you get the gist of it. It is also important to note that things like the N-word or other racial slurs are protected by the First Amendment. The government can't regulate someone from saying the N-word on a public street, for instance. Now, the trans community has been advocating for misgendering to be a criminal offense, meaning the government should be allowed to regulate that speech. Here is a trans woman from CNN explaining it.
And next, Secretary Castro, I want to bring in Shay Diamond, a singer-songwriter from Los Angeles. She currently supports Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Shay, what's your question?
It's Shea Diamond.
Shea Diamond.
Put that on the record.
Okay. It's on the record. Thank you.
Yes, honey. It's violence to misgender or to alter a name of a trans person. So let's always get that right first.
Now, you have the right to offend people in the United States. Matter of fact, it's a constitutional right. That doesn't mean that there will not be social consequences for offending someone, but the government can't regulate that type of speech. They can't regulate offense. Think about it. If using the N-word, which is offensive, we all can agree the N-word is offensive, could be made criminal, if the N-word could be made criminal, how many rappers would be in jail, right? Just for saying that word. Now, is misgendering as bad as using racial slurs? No. I don't think so. And legally, you have the right to misgender someone just as you have the right to use a racial slur. But the government, remember this is the key point, the government can't punish you for using that racial slur or misgendering someone. But your friends or your social group can. Now, I want you to keep these facts in mind as we read this article from Newsweek. More millennials think referring to a transgender person by the wrong pronouns should be a criminal offense than think it should be legal, according to a new poll conducted exclusively on Newsweek. Now, I just want to be very clear before we go on to further than this, is that what they're asking for is that the government limit your constitutional rights, take more power from the people by making it illegal to offend someone, which is extremely dangerous, because what's offensive changes from person to person, from group to group, from the speaker to speaker, right? A white person saying the N-word is different than a black person saying the N-word. Not me saying the N-word at work is different than me saying the N-word at a bar. There's so much context to it. That's why generally offense doesn't meet the criteria for a violation of the First Amendment. According to the survey, 44% of those aged 25 to 34 think referring to someone by the wrong gender pronoun, he, him, or she, her, should be a criminal offense versus 31% who disagree. The remainder neither agree nor disagree or don't know. Now, this is shocking, because if you were to ask those people if calling someone a racial slur should be a criminal offense, I would like to hear what they would say. I would love to see if they would say, yeah, I believe it should be, or no, if they shouldn't be. I think the numbers would be drastically different, because we all know that racial slurs are legal and are constitutionally protected. So misgendering, I think, easily qualifies as something that is freedom of speech and that cannot be regulated by the government. So I don't think there's any possibility that this can be made illegal. So this is hopeful, but I think this really shows the ignorance of the public. This view remains popular for those aged 35 through 44, among whom 38% think misgendering should be illegal, while 35% disagree and 26% don't know either way. Now, it even shows you the older you get, the more people I think start realizing that this gives the government too much power and that we need to kind of scale this back. But even that, more people believe it should be made illegal. So that's scary, because isn't that what they say about free speech? Free speech dies to a round of applause. Stop them from saying the bad things. But that is not what free speech is. That's tyranny. The rights of transgender people whose gender identity doesn't match their sex they were given at birth. I gotta stop there. No one gives you sex at birth, right? It's like I see the sky, which is blue, and I'm assigning it the color blue. Nobody assigned it the color blue. It is blue, right? No one assigns a baby gender or sex, right? These are the sex organs that you have, and we identify that as being male, and you have a gender of woman, and these organs conform with that, right? It's not assigning, you're just identifying what you see. So what they're trying to do is make the hard reality of sex, because it's a hard reality. This is the sex that you are at birth, and trying to say that some doctors are out there looking at it and saying, well, you know what, I'm going to assign you to be a male, even though you have female parts. That's not how it works. Matter of fact, I would like to see the doctor who has a child, let's say born male, and then tries to assign them the birth certificate since they're female. That doesn't work. No, you're not allowed to do that. I think that would be illegal if they put the wrong gender on the birth certificate intentionally, right? But it is what it is. And the corresponding impact on women's rights has developed into a hot political issue across the United States. Republican-controlled states have passed a string of laws impacting transgender people, such as banning sex change operations or hormone treatments for minors. I agree with all that. I don't believe you should be allowing 7-year-olds or 6-year-olds to transition from one gender to the next, because I don't think they have the mental capacity to really understand what that decision means. We know that transitioning someone before puberty is irreversible, so that's an issue that also has to deal with. It's just so complicated, but I think right now it's best to refrain from changing someone in an irreversible way than allowing those changes to go through. According to the Pew Research Center, a millennial is someone between 1981 born between 1981 and 1986. So they're giving you the breakdown. But obviously, the younger you get, the more you're in agreement that this should be illegal. They tell you the poll was 1,500 people. And let me see. However, the figure of millennials contrasts starkly with that for Americans as a whole. So now they're talking about, so we asked just millennials who are very, very crazy with this. Now they're asking everybody. So among whom just 19% of Americans, right? Out of everybody they pulled, only 19% want misgendering to be a criminal offense. Thank God, because it lets me know that most of the people in the United States are sane people, while 65% disagree and 12% don't know either way. Yeah, it's ridiculous, because there are worse things that you can call somebody than misgendering them, and all those things are legal. I wish I can say more of these on stream, even though they violate YouTube's terms of service. But just imagine the things I can say here that would be worse than misgendering a person, but it would be legal. Crazy. Now, this is another interesting twist to this whole study. Notably, Gen Z, those are people who are even a little younger, from ages 18 to 24, who can vote, are notably less keen on making misgendering a crime than other millennials. Among that group, only 33% consider calling someone by the wrong pronoun should be a criminal offense, while 48% disagree. So this is the people who are just going into college and in college. They disagree. They're like, that's crazy. So it seems like right after they get out of college, that's when they just go stir crazy. I think that's the social media effect. Yeah, misgendering is a crime, blah, blah, blah. But it seems like the parents raised them right, send them off to the college, and they say, yeah, this is ridiculous, just like their parents. And then after that 4 years of indoctrination, they come out and they're like, yeah, it's got to be made illegal. More Americans said they would refer to both transgender men and women by their requested pronouns, of course, than would refuse to do so. Of course, I would definitely. I'll call you what you want. Remember? I would even call you a pimp named Slickback if you wanted to be called a pimp named Slickback. In total, 37% said they would call someone who was previously a male, she or her if requested. 70% said they would continue to use the he, his pronouns. 28% saying it depends, and 17% said they didn't know. One of the things that I find to be interesting is that the repercussions of this, I can identify as whatever I want, right? I can identify as a man, I can identify as a woman. See, for those of you who don't know, in the United States, we have what's known as Selective Service. It's essentially the draft. So if the United States goes to war and we need men to fight, we have a law that says if you're a man over the age of 18, you can be enlisted to fight for your country, right? By force. By force. It's compelled fighting. It's the draft. It's called Selective Services. Now, the draft hasn't happened in generations, but the law is still there where if you are a male and you do not sign up for the Selective Services, you get fined. You get fined. So what this congressman is asking is that a law be passed that changes the definition of male in the federal government. So in other words, if you just identify as a male, you don't have to actually physically be a male, but if you now identify as a male and say, hey, I was a woman and now I'm a male and I'm identifying as a male, you too must now sign up for Selective Services and be held to the same standards as the men who are compelled to do it by law. But the Democrats, they say no. So check out his little speech. Listen to this.
The Biden administration is so serious about prioritizing so-called equity that no one should have a problem with my amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, which would require anyone who identifies as a man to register for the Selective Service. If these folks want to be treated like men, they need to act like men. I don't support the woke agenda, as you know. I'm fully against it. But if Democrats want to play ball, then let's play some ball. Let's see what excuses they come up with for opposing this plan. It puts some real responsibility on the folks that we're all sick of these games. We're sick of the Democrat leaders' hypocrisy, but if they insist on going down this road, they should expect the responsibility that comes with it. Or we could toss the whole woke agenda in the garbage can where it belongs.
So now, at the end of the day, what do you people think? Now, I think this is ridiculous, but I've been wrong before. And I could be wrong again. I think this is dangerous thinking when we start trying to regulate other speech so they can't offend people. I've been offended before. I've offended other people before. People have offended me before. And sometimes you may offend someone and not even know it. But misgendering someone? Really? That's ridiculous. And what do you think about this Selective Services issue? Should men or people who identify as men be forced to sign up to Selective Service? Now, we also saw a little bit of this in Ukraine. When Russia invaded and Ukraine, they were saying, well, hey, any man over the age of 18 can't leave the country. You got to come fight for your country because we need all hands on deck. And then people who were identifying as women were trying to leave, and they were like, no, brother, no. You're coming to fight, throw a rifle in their hand, and was like, we're going to the front lines. You're a man. So it seems like whenever, blank hit the fan, all the whole gender, affirming stuff went out the window and was like, what's between your legs? Because we need you to go to war. But, I'm torn in one way because I do understand, if you just imagine if you feel like you're trapped in the wrong body, but you can't force everyone else to appease one group, even to the point where you're trying to strip others' constitutional rights away from them to appease one group. But again, tell me in the comment section where I'm wrong. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'm out of here. Peace.